All right. So I was looking through some documents, and I always say research. Do your research. Are you conducting your research? What is your method of research? Your preferred method of research, right? Do you like to read? Do you like to browse through the internet, look at articles? You like to listen to audiobooks, right? How are you researching? Or if you haven't searched for it and you don't know it exists, then how are you doing the inquiry? You look at data and statistics, right? I try to at least read a little bit about various subjects, whether that be in the sciences, the neuroscience, psychology, education policy, all of that stuff. And so, for those of you that know me, I typically am looking for, I like to read court cases. I like to read decisions, look through code, policy, legislation. All that might sound boring to you, but that might not be your lane, right? But it's intriguing to me, so I like to do that. So I look at different states too, governments, and decisions that they made, and things around land, things around economic policies, right? Seeing how governance structures carry out decisions and create things. So while I was doing my search and inquiry today, I came upon some updates that I wanted to share with you. Okay. Wanted to share this information with you all because I'm not sure if we speak very much about the UN and what's happening over there. I know I have before. I've talked about, global goals. I talked about UN fundamental rights, talking about their articles and sections dealing with human rights and education. But this particular group is a working group, right? So if you haven't seen it, I'm going to drop this in the chat. And as you see at the top, this is an official website, countdown to Human Rights Day. 26 days, y'all. Countdown. I thought Human Rights Day was every day. But you know what? Hey, 26 days, countdown to Human Rights Day. Just so you know, that the UN believes that justice should be accessible to everyone. And if you go right here, you can learn more about those beliefs and what they're doing. But like I said, I'm going to drop this in the chat. And let me know how you're doing, where you tuning in from. We're going to talk about this for a little while, right? A lot of times, research is being conducted, groups are forming, commissions and experts and all of these things, and they're researching you. But are you researching back? Do you know what is being said about you and what decisions are being made about you, right? And so as you can see right here, the United Nations Human Rights Office of the High Commissioner. And this is about the working group of experts on people of African descent. So if you didn't know this existed, we're going to talk about it tonight. I dropped it in the chat for you. Take some time to look through some of these tabs up here, you can see right here, there's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Human Rights Day. Okay, there's topics. You can view all kinds of UN topics, right? Countries, look at the country reports. Okay. Matter of fact, we're going to go to one. Here's the human rights law, right? Just if you've never seen this before you look at pictures, and what I like to do is, anything that has words or pictures, I like to try to listen to it before I visually see it. And that might not be your study style. And then if there are pictures, I have trained my brain to try to skip past the pictures and just look at the words and then go back and look at the pictures, right? I learned that I a lot from that. Anyway, so if you didn't know this group exists, now you know. And if you wanted to take some time before just looking at this briefly, I put the link in the chat. You can go back and look at it. So here is a working group of experts on people of African descent. The United Nations Human Rights Special Procedures, Special Rapporteurs, independent experts, and working groups, okay? So let's look at about the mandate, okay? We see some information on the left and the right. So as you can see, the World Conference Against Racism, Racial Discrimination, Xenophobia, and Related Intolerance, held in Durban in 2011, adopted the Durban Declaration and Program of Action. I don't know if y'all knew that. Okay. It specifically requested the Commission on Human Rights to consider establishing a working group or other mechanism of the United Nations to study the problems of racial discrimination faced by people of African descent living in the African diaspora, and make proposals for the elimination of racial discrimination against people of African descent. So that's what this group was mandated to do. Now, this working group of experts on people of African descent was established in 2002. So you see more information here about the commission. And so by the commission, the group of experts was established. And by the Commission on Human Rights Resolution 2002-68 as a special procedure. The mandate was subsequently renewed by the Commission on Human Rights and the Human Rights Council in its resolutions. And here they have the resolution information. As you can see, it says it right there, right? And let me zoom in so you can see that a little bit better. This page is kind of weird. So when I try to go past 100 on Zoom to zoom in, you kind of got to mess with the page a little bit. So right here, you see these numbers, the Commission of Human Rights. That's what that CHR is going to stand for. And if you want to read more about those resolutions, you're going to click on each one. Okay. You're going to click on each one, right? More about the mandate of the working group of experts on people of African descent. And you can click that too. Now, what I found interesting was when I wanted to click on here to go to topics, it says, when you click on topics and you hover over it, it says breadcrumb. And I'm like, wait a minute, let me hover over this again. So I click on the topics, and you can try this at home. I don't know if it's going to show up on your end, right? I see the word breadcrumb. Okay. So let's go down and find out what this group's been doing. Here is the working group members. As you can see, the WGEPAD is composed of 5 independent experts appointed on the basis of equitable geographic representation. Members are elected for 3 years and can be renewed for 1 additional 3-year mandate. Oh, I hope they want to appoint me. Let's just say that, because you know what? That's a good amount of time. Well, let's just keep going. Anyway, learn more about the working group's current members. You can click on that. Okay, now here's the part you want to pay attention to. Okay, there are some calls for input. So if you didn't know, I've talked about this before with the Code of Federal Regulations in the US. You know, they have opportunities for input where you can go and give public comment. Now, remember, public comment stays public. Freedom of Information Act, understand what that means. Open and public records, understand what that means in your particular state in the US, right? Know what all that means so that you know what you have the right to have access to, so that you understand how to ask for these things and, not have secrets hidden. Now, what I do know is in research of policy, legislation, code, these abbreviations can confuse you, right? But once you familiarize yourself with the abbreviations and acronyms, you'll be able to navigate smoothly. Sometimes I do have difficulty finding things, and I think that's by design, right? Like they put them in a labyrinth, and the information is. Let me see who is calling me. If y'all don't see me on here live, oh, it's potential spam. Yeah, I'm not gonna answer spam right now. All right, so I forgot to turn my ringer off. That's all good. We're here, and there's potential spam. And I put my name and number and email and all of that good stuff on the national do not call list. But you know what? I don't think it's working anymore. Like I checked it and I get spam calls all day. How about you? Right. And the emails are even worse. I mean, I could block these people 10 times and they still find a way. I think, addresses are being sold. I don't know. Anyway, be careful for that as an aside, because there's a lot of scams, and the better that technology gets and AI and all of that, when they send you these emails, they look like the real thing. They look like the real company. They look authentic. Sometimes you can click on it and it'll mess you up. So I say set the highest protection on your emails and phones. There's a button that you can push to eliminate spam calls, but like I said, some still get through. And I mean, because they have the same area code and they're able to be smart about it as my phone. But we'll talk about that some other time. All right. And so here you can see that there is a call for input. That deadline was on September 8th, right? I don't know if you knew this or not, right? Like how many people are talking about this? So if you were in Norway, they were looking for call for written submissions. Visit by the United Nations Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent to Norway. Okay. And here was another one. Okay. Report of the UN Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent reviewing the 20 years of work since its establishment and how to address more effectively the human rights concern of people of African descent. The deadline for that passed the 30th of June, 2023. Right? And then here's another one. Like, so as you can see, there's all of these calls for input that you are able to, get your submissions in. You just got to make sure that you make it and pay attention to these deadlines. Okay. And so I don't know if there are more coming up. It looks like there was a lot that just passed this year. And if you go through the site, there may be a way to just link directly or email or whatever you feel like you want to do. But I would definitely research them first, find out what's going on, and find out the topics that they're covering. All right. So here you can see some key documents. Okay. WGPAD, PEPAD, now I'm tongue tied. Operational guidelines on inclusion of people of African descent in the 2030 agenda. Y'all know what the 2030 agenda is. I taught this for almost a year. Healthy People 2030 is a part, you need to look it up. I told you that whether you like it or not, governance structures and their decision making are going to be done with or without you. Unless you have your tiny island that you're the supreme ruler over, and whatever that looks like, right? You get to create all the rules and all of that. You live in a codified system with a governance structure that is codified in the code, right? Most of it being legal code, then turned into policy, which dictates the practices. We'll talk about that if you want, right? I can go back over this again, but what I want you to do is begin your journey of researching. Okay, so as you can see right here, they also have this brochure on the working group of experts on people of African descent. Okay, here is the report. For 20 years, facilitating the journey from rhetoric to reality in the fight against racism. Okay, so the latest thematic reports are down here. And as you can see, like that says, the Human Rights Commission, HRC, right? You have to understand what it is that you're looking for, and then you get to know what you're looking at, right? Facilitating the journey, there's the report. You can click on it and you can look at it, right? And then the country reports are the ones that I like to read. Like I said before, here are the latest country reports. Now, remember, we're talking about the working group members of the working group of experts on people of African descent. That's what we're talking about. Okay, just in case for review, we're talking about the reports. We're talking about your submissions, if you signed up for that call for input, being included and considered in these reports. So this is why it's important to know these things. All right. And so if we go right here down to the latest country report, we see that there was one October 5th, 2023. And that was a visit to the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland report of the working group of experts on people of African descent. And this is an advanced, unedited version. Okay, unedited. Now you have one that was in September this year. Okay, it is the visit to Australia. Report of the working group of experts on people of African descent, advanced, unedited version. All right. And so then you go down and there's some stories. You see these stories, you see the date. I don't see any, from 2023, but there's plenty of reports, and that's why it's important to read. And here you have this contact information. Okay. The working group of experts on people of African descent have an address and a phone number and an email address. You see that? I'm going to let that sit there for a minute. Right? Now, some of y'all say, oh, nobody ever talks about what's going on, to go to the UN, And, you like to quote Malcolm X said, go to the UN. And, and look, we need to be innovative. Like, the things that you guys are talking about are already being done or have been done before, and that's fine, right? Put your input in, right? But these are commissioned reports. These are commissioned studies and reports. Last time I talked about how the Kerner Commission report, what did it do? Where's it at? Also, aka riot report, right? The report on civil disorders, which, you call it, if you ask me, should have been called the report on civil disobedience for a reason, right? But even in that, there were media recommendations. There's tons of data that is commissioned about us. And we have to beg the question, what are you doing with all the information? I mean, they done researched us to death. I done told you. Research, because they researching you, whether you like it or not. And 9 out of 10, they already got it. I told you, look up epigenetics. Okay. And so I don't want to go too much into the science of all of this, but I just want you to be paying attention. And then let's go over to this mandate, right? I want to talk a little bit more about this mandate. So let's see. Did it switch tabs? Yep, it did. All right. And so here you can see a press release from February 16th, 2021. And it says right here, mandate of the working group of experts on people of African descent. Dear Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee, Subcommittee Chairman Steve Cohen, and Chairman Gerald Nadler. And let me take this highlight off. Okay. I don't even know if I can. Whatever. The UN Working Group of Experts. Oh, now it wants to work. All right. The UN Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent. One of the special procedures of the United Nations Human Rights Council is an independent fact-finding and monitoring mechanism that operates globally to investigate and assess human rights of people of African descent. In 2016, at the invitation of Your Excellency's government, the working group conducted a fact-finding country visit to the United States and issued conclusions and recommendations based on its findings there. Do y'all know that? How many of you knew that this working group conducted a fact-finding country visit to the United States? And you know what? I just thought about it. If y'all are tuning in from Facebook, I have to go over there to answer questions because I don't know. I can't see them on my app. All right. And so in 2016, this happened. Did you know? Right? Did you know? And have you read those recommendations? Right? This is why we're doing this tonight. Okay. This is why we're doing this. So I'm going to drop this link in the chat. I know some of my peoples over there in the Midwest and East Coast. Christina, why you come on so late? I'll be missing it. Yeah, well, the sun set in the west, honey, and you know where I'm at. This is California. It is still early. We just getting started. All right, so here you go with the page that I'm currently sharing, so you can look it up at your leisure, or you can go along with me as I am speaking about it, because I'm going straight from the source. Okay. In 2020, here we are right here. I don't want you to get lost. The working group participated in and commented on the United Nations Human Rights Council urgent debate on racially inspired human rights violations, systemic racism, police brutality, and violence against peaceful protests. There and elsewhere, the working group has affirmed the right to reparations and the importance of meaningful reparations for people of African descent in the United States. Now, they give their reason, okay? And this UN working group of experts says that the right to reparations and the right to remedy, and I like the term remedy. I'll tell you why, because they're talking legal remedy, right? If you are injured or harmed by someone, you have the right to petition the court for a remedy. That can be in the form of monetary compensation or damages, right? That is what they mean by remedy. That's legal term. Look it up. And reparations is well defined in international law. So what they're saying is that this is well defined in international law. That's clear. We don't have to wonder about if it's defined or not, because it's well defined in international law. Okay. I want to scroll back up a little bit. As you can see right here, there was another press release. UN independent experts urge practical measures to eradicate racial discrimination. How many recommendations, commissions, and reports these folks need? I just want to know, right? That everybody knows what is being said, because you either have experienced it, seen someone who has, or read these reports. We're going to continue another 75 years of human rights reporting on this issue, right? What is your action? Okay, what is your action? So let's go on because I can get on a whole other thing about that. Yet the reason for reparations is powerfully illustrated by the ongoing story of people of African descent in the United States. Do you know you was being used as an example? Around the world, this is the UN. Okay. And so powerful manifestations of systemic racism in employment, education, health, and the legal system today might have been avoided had meaningful reparations come to pass for gross violations of human rights suffered by people, sorry, I couldn't see it, of African descent. The urgent need, and they're talking about House of Rep Bill 40, right? You look that up and look it up in the right Congress. Okay. If it was last year, we're on the 118th, I believe, and if it was last year, it'll be 117th, and so that's how you would count that. The urgent need for HR 40 is evident in the continued legacy of the United States of America self-described original sin of enslavement. Ongoing systemic racial discrimination is measurable and well documented with respect to people of African descent, and research shows that racial disparities persist throughout U.S. communities and institutions, from medical bias to mass incarceration. Talk about this all the time, y'all. What is being said about you? What is being reported about you? How are you being utilized as a data, a number, right? And those this report equates to recommendations and decisions that are being made, and you might not even know that this exists. Well, you know now. Okay. Now, the historical biases that create an enabling environment for racial inequality are evident in institutions, expectations, and norms today. For example, in many communities associated historically with racial terror lynching, the very architects of racial subordination and the political leaders known for commitments to white supremacy are memorialized, while histories of racial terror are whitewashed. The lack of accountability for racialized misconduct often serves to normalize racial terror as a form of collective punishment and as a social control tactic. How many times y'all hear me say that it's control by deprivation? Okay. I want you to understand exactly what it is, control experiments and all of this other stuff. I say this time and time again, but maybe you need to hear it from the UN, and that's fine. That's fine. You can hear it from this special group, working group of experts, but as long as you get it and you start studying these things, because you know what? If you don't understand how you got somewhere, how you going to get out away? Like, I mean, seriously, and I'm not saying that you're going to understand everything when you start reading, but understand what's being researched and stated about you, right? And what decisions are being made and how to input your voice into those decisions. And so here we can see that they said this working group of experts, let me roll back up to the top so you can see where I'm at. This working group of, I don't know what's wrong with my computer off. The mandate of the working group of experts on people of African descent released this to the U.S. in 2021, right? Talking about y'all. I know if you look like me, I'm talking about y'all, talking about us, okay? What is happening here in the U.S. and how it serves as a powerful example for the reason of reparations, a right to a remedy and to be repaired. The right to a remedy, a legal remedy, and to be repaired. Okay, so it wasn't this or that, it was this and that, which is well defined in international law. Okay, now let's go on. As you can see, ongoing systemic racial discrimination is measurable and well documented. That's true. With respect to people of African descent, and research shows that racial disparities persist throughout U.S. communities and institutions, from medical bias to mass incarceration. The historical biases that create an enabling environment for racial inequality are evident in institutions, expectations, and norms today. So show this to people that say it's unjustified and unwarranted, and then they can look up the data, but they know, and they're just, trying to ruffle your feathers. So I typically don't have conversations with anybody that hasn't studied to show themselves approved anyway, because I'm spending my time, like, unless I'm teaching, right? Because I'm going to spend my time researching and understanding what is being said, what decisions are being made, and to argue with somebody that didn't even take their time to study the matter. No, stop wasting your time doing that. Unless you're teaching, it's not a waste of time, right? But then if you're teaching, then it's probably someone that's willing or wants to learn the information as an adult, because this is not for children. It's not like a school subject, even though it should be. And so, as you can see, the historical biases that create an enabling environment for racial inequality are evident. Okay, now I stopped at the terror, the normalized terror, and that being used as a social control tactic. Okay, and that offered a framework to begin to shift that narrative. Importantly, the racial bias and stark racial disparities that are measurable in many U.S. institutions might look far different today had reparations come to pass in a timely and meaningful manner consistent with international human rights law. How many times do people need a warning, right? I remember the Kerner Commission report talking about ways to repair the harm. And, what happened after that, it was like, oh, we'll just, do all these social programs for everyone to have social programs, right? Not talking about particularly what this working group is talking about, which is experts on people of African descent. Okay. And so typically that's what happens when, these kind of commissions are put together and these reports come out. It's like, okay, let's just bring forward more programs because the reparations and that kind of conversation sounds good. And we might even do a commission of our own to restudy the harm and see where we're at. But that's about it. We're going to put that on the shelf and we'll bring out the same tactic next time people get rowdy. Settle down, folks. Settle down. Importantly, the racial bias and stark racial disparities that are measurable in many U.S. institutions might look far different today had reparations come to pass in a timely and meaningful manner, consistent with human rights law. A meaningful commitment to reparations, as is required under international human rights law, but will have important and immediate impact. HR 40 can play an important role in understanding, acknowledging, addressing, and dismantling systemic racism in the United States and promoting racial equity. Okay. The particular urgency of HR 40 remains evident today. In 2020, it was widely stated that people of African descent navigated two pandemics, systemic racism and COVID-19. Several incidents of police-involved violence toward people of African descent motivated calls for accountability and catalyzed public protests. Now, see, this is the report right here, but you know what? You didn't remember that all this happened in 2020 because y'all was too busy watching Who Cloned Tyrone, right? And they just brought out some, entertainers to come and distract you. And you probably never even seen this and didn't understand that it was a part of international law, well-defined and measured human rights law. And here we have a report by the expert group commissioned by the UN. And what happened with that? Stop getting distracted. And so, as you can see, in several widely reported cases, the delays in the role of public demand in initiating even basic investigations. Whew, I like how they put that. Even basic investigations, right? Raise questions about the integrity of stated commitments to accountability and justice. You see that? You can't even get a basic investigation, right? How many times did you say, you know what, I'm not even going to complain because they're not going to do anything about it? They won't even investigate, or they'll gaslight you. Well, guess what? The UN agrees. The UN agreed, and they put it in a report to the US. What the US do with the report? Talking about HR 40, right? Where are we at? Are we there yet? And so, in several widely reported cases, the delays and public demand, and I read this already, in the role of public demand in initiating even basic investigations raised questions about the integrity of stated commitments to accountability and justice. Here they go on to name names, okay? As you can see them right here. The tragic loss, and I'm sorry, y'all, I'm having issues with my mouse, but we're going to get there. The tragic loss of Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Botham Jean, Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, Philando Castile, Alton Sterling, Terrence Crutcher, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and too many others today raised the questions. I put that in there. See, they need to go on ahead and appoint me to be a part of this expert working group. Raised the question of the role of racial terror in the enforcement of the law in the United States. Well, that's what the system was designed for, right? I have talked about several times things being tied to or connected to or drawn from Roman law. Okay, Roman law, right? And we know how brutal they are, but we also know how Rome fell. You ever think about that, right? So, at the same time, racial disparities were evident from the earliest days. And look, I didn't write this report. Whether you like it or not, this is the report. We're reading it. Were evident from the earliest days of the COVID-19 pandemic. People of African and Afro-Latino descent were hardest hit by COVID-19 infection severity and mortality, as well as disparities in access to healthcare, high quality treatment interventions, and most recently vaccination. Well, that's, we've been dealing with disparities in health issues for a long time. This is not the first time that we've brought it up. I mean, a lot of things were highlighted, but y'all know how it is trying to get to specialists and doctors and then have them believe you. Okay, I could talk about this on and on and on and on about times where I had serious pain because I had a gallbladder issue. I'm just going to share that. And these people treated me like an addict because I'm going to the ER asking for someone to please help me get rid of this pain, take it away. And they're like, we're not going to remove your gallbladder. And they just leave me there sweating. Okay. And no, you're not in pain. It doesn't hurt that bad. Go over there, sit down, and be still and wait. And you know what? Even when we put you in a room, we still need to go and evaluate whether or not you're just here to look for drugs. But we're going to go ahead and dope up the people that are actually looking for drugs. Don't get me started. The health disparity hasn't even begun to be addressed. People talk about it just like we're talking about this commissioned mandate for the working group of experts and their recommendations, right? And so this is why I seize opportunities to help myself as much as possible. And I engage with other people that are like-minded. Today, predictable and avoidable racial disparities persist unabated throughout the pandemic, perhaps because of widespread disinclination to talk about. I was just saying this. I didn't even read all the way through here before I came on, y'all. I read another report and I wanted to get on here and show y'all all of this stuff. Desalination throughout the pandemic, perhaps because of widespread desalination, to talk about one, the racialized impact of overrepresentation of people of African descent among designated essential workers, including home health aides, nursing home personnel, delivery personnel, grocery workers, and the increased risk of infection due to dense living condition. Overrepresentation in hotspots and or inability to fully quarantine and lack of access to adequate health care. Now, I will say this is the biggest issue, and it always has been, right? And even if people say we're going to give, all of these dollars so that everybody has access to quality health care, we know that we're still over here battling doctors. We're still over here battling doctors to believe us and to help allow us to be included in our own medical treatment plan, right? I talked to you guys about this. Don't make decisions, switch doctors if you can. Some of y'all told me you can't when I did the lesson on fully informed consent and being a part of your own medical treatment plan, right? And being an active part of it, to where, if you have a doctor that's not really willing to have a conversation with you and spend time explaining what is going on, and you feel pressured or forced into procedures or other things, then that is not being a part of your medical treatment plan. Now, I don't know how many times I've had an issue with either finding quality pediatrics at Kaiser, because this, I'm sharing my personal experience. I'm an advocate. That's what I do, right? And I try to deal with it by asking for the chief or, doctor on staff or the chief nurse on staff. And you know what? The problem didn't get resolved. So then what did I do? I filed a complaint, right? And we need to learn how to codify stuff instead of going calling our auntie and our cousins and stuff and complaining. And that's okay too. But you have to put it in writing, or then people will come back and say it didn't happen and continue to treat other people that way. They'll continue to treat other people that way and say they're not doing it. And then we look for the reports and the data, and we know from our experiences that it's happening and has happened over time and continues to happen. Yet when we go look in the records, there's nothing written, right? There's, oh no, we didn't do this. This was what we did, right? Start codifying your complaint. And so let's go on from this COVID-19 thing and talk about what they said next about the right to reparations. So here you have: the right to reparations reflects precisely this concern that gross violations of human rights, unaddressed, give rise to ongoing injustice and inequality. I got my glasses on too, y'all. I don't know why I'm messing up words. For people of African descent, the violation of human rights was legalized policy of the United States for well over 100 years and continues to impact families and communities profoundly. Okay. It is evident that stark racial disparities in COVID-19 and elsewhere might have been deterred had meaningful reparations ensued after the repeal of enslavement or Jim Crow laws. Well, they wasn't finished oppressing you. Why would somebody pay to repair harm when they ain't done harming? Right? Think about that. Okay. And so here we have right here the apparent lack of compliance with international law and human rights treaties. Boy, oh boy. This is going to be what you want to look up with regards to more about what is the international law and human rights treaties, right? And so in its 2016 report to the United States, the working group of experts on people of African descent identified clear gaps in the supplication of international human rights law. Look it up. Okay. The gross violations of human rights experienced by people of African descent violate, who's going to be enforcing it? Violate international human rights law. Okay. It violates it. You see that, right? This is the thing that they said to the US. The UN working group of experts on people of African descent, commissioned by the UN, set this group up. And this is the report that they gave to the United States to let them know that they were in gross violation of human rights experienced by people of African descent. Did you know that? Did anybody tell you? Or you had the experience, but did you see how it was written, right? At the UN. So the set forth, and here we are. I gotta keep my place. Set forth in Article 3 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and as you see, that's the short form of saying abbreviating it, right? Acronyms, abbreviations, know them. And Article 6 of the, oh my gosh, this mouse. I need to figure out how to fix that. All right, Article 6 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, ICCPR, ratified by the United States of America in 1992. So they're in violation of their own ratified rights, right? Their own stated thing. So if we were to click on that, it would say exactly where you can find that information at, right? So when you see those little footnotes pop up, it typically they will have a link, and I'm glad that they do here. It shows you the Human Rights Committee general comment, right? And where that information is found, talking about that 1992 right. Okay, let's go back. We're almost done with this. In addition, the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, CERD, which monitors implementation of the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, has issued relevant guidance in this matter, to which the United States is bound as a state party. Did they listen? Who's going to enforce it? Okay. Who's going to enforce what is stated here as gross human rights violations, as the international covenant? Last time I checked, the covenant is a contract, and if they codified it, that's law, right? On civil and political rights, who is going to enforce that? Ratified by the United States. Okay. Ratified. And so what they're saying is that they're violating their own laws and policies when it comes to human rights and their treatment of Black people, or people of African descent, because this working group is the working group of experts on African descent. And so here is their conclusion. Thus, for the reasons set forth herein, the UN working group of experts on people of African descent welcomes the House Judiciary's committee's hearings on H.R. 40, as well as the broad base of support for the bill within the United States Congress. And the working group also recognizes the crucial, timely importance of these hearings. It's already passed, right? Because this was, you can go look it up. That's what I want you to do. Perhaps most importantly, and here we are, the working group encourages this important step embodied in H.R. 40 towards acknowledging and addressing ongoing legacies of legalized, racial discrimination, inequality, and inequity in the United States of America. Please accept, excellencies, the assurances of our highest consideration. Again, that was the letter, that was recommendation release February 2021, given to the US. You see the people that were, addressed in the release with the information. And I want to take you to the 2016, and you can go and look this up. I'm going to put a link. I don't know if the link will work in here. Yeah, so what you're going to have to do is go to the UN site and look for this report. Now, I found the report, and if you look at it, right, like I see it and it came up, and yes, it looks like this is Spanish, but hold on, don't leave yet, right? Because I want to show you sometimes when you're looking for documents, how they might come up. Because when I looked for this is what came up on my end, and I see Asamblea General Naciones Unidas, right? So we know we're on the right document. And I see that it says the General District, 18th of August, and this is in Espanol, but the original was in English. But this was what came up when I went to go and actually look for the report. And so I'm probably going to have to click on another link, but this is interesting. So Consejo de Derechos Humanos, you see that, right? The Council of Human Rights, this is the UN. And as you can see, the information right here, and I mean, I do speak Spanish and I read it, so it's fine. I know what I was looking at. But for anybody that's just looking for stuff, you're not going to know that this is what it is when you first see it. Right? And so, as you can see, Informe del Grupo de Trabajo de Expertos sobre, okay, right here, they're telling you again that this is the report from the group of experts, the working group of experts that are commissioned by the Human Rights Commissioner, right? And so they're talking about Black people in America. All right, now, here is a note to the secretary. Again, that's in Spanish, but you're going to have to go to the next page, okay? So if you see that the title and all of that information on pages 1 through 2 were in Spanish, but you got to keep scrolling. I told y'all, sometimes it be in the labyrinth. You got to keep scrolling. And as you can see right here, you're right here again, you have this, but then the contents are in English and everything else from there is in English. All right. So just learn how to take your time, keep scrolling. Sometimes I've come upon documents that are in Spanish and I'm like, oh, okay, this is what it is. And, I take my time and read it. If it's in Spanish, I can read it and I just sit there and read it. Sometimes there's a tool on, Google where you can go and say, translate this document, and you can do that too and see if it comes in English. But for this case, this report, the first couple pages are in Spanish, and then when you get to the table of contents, you're going to find it in English. And so I'm not going to read this whole report. Some of y'all probably clapping and some of y'all probably want me to, but I want all of you to research for yourselves and study for yourselves. And as you can see, it's going to say the introduction, background, historical overview, legal framework, and steps taken for the protection of the human rights of people of African descent, and, legal framework, institutional and policy measures, manifestations of racial discrimination. Here's all of this stuff that's in the report: the criminal justice system and the barriers to civil and political participation, disparities in education. Now, all of this is about Estados Unidos de America. So we're talking about the US, right? Now, you saw those calls go out where they said a call for input, that they were asking for other places like in Australia and the UK and Norway. And if you didn't give your input, wait till next year and see if there's some other countries that are going to be, they're going to be visiting. You can give your input. But for this particular report, it was with regards to the human rights and, what the working group of experts discovered about the people of African descent in the United States. Okay. And so I said, keep going and you'll see the report. It's right there. It's right there. And they give the introduction and invitation of the government, which, was also in the last page that we read, about how they were invited to come and produce information and get this report and, shared their findings and gave their recommendations that a legal remedy and reparations be granted. And they gave their reasons why, right? And so here you can see, that the working group regrets that it was not given access contrary to the terms of reference for special procedure mandate holders to Mississippi State Penitentiary Parchment Farms as had been requested. Visits to such facilities provide opportunities to obtain views and to make recommendations regarding measures needed to address violations and improve compliance with international law. Failure to permit and facilitate such visits undermine the responsibility of the United States to cooperate with the United Nations Human Rights Mechanism. The working group also regrets that it was not possible to meet with all of the high-level state and local level authorities as had been requested. Well, their responsibility, yeah, but the cooperation, this is what I'm saying about the reports, right? This is what I'm saying about these mandated commissioned reports that remind me of the Kerner Commission report, and the nothing that was done with that, right? And so definitely want to hear from y'all. I thought I would just come and share this information. It was really on my mind. I have been looking around to find out what was going on with the UN and what was updated, and what are they talking about again. Study to show yourself approved. Don't waste your time. Time is an important resource. You can't buy no more time. You can't sell none of your time. Don't waste your time in foolish arguments after you done came out of your studies with people that do not have a desire to learn what it is that you're trying to express. I see all of these, arguments and back and forth conversations on social media. And you guys don't even know who these people are behind the screen. They could just be doing that as antagonists, right? Some people are just there to antagonize. And you're sharing this wonderful, information. And here they come lurking and watching. And, some of them have fake profiles. I don't really care. I don't waste my time. If you're going to follow me, I have public profiles. Everybody sees them. Everybody can look my name up and look exactly what I'm about. And if you don't like what I'm about, don't follow me. Simple as that. But I'm not going to waste my time going back and forth about whether or not you like my content, right? Those who do will locate it. Those who don't, block. Don't follow. Follow someone that, is going to fulfill your yearning for information. I am going to consistently say, do your research, study, and if you didn't already know the information was there, then it's going to be a search for you, right? And then once you search that information, research it again, because trust and believe, they're researching us, and we need to be making sure that we are doing our research and figuring out what is being said in our names, about us, around us, all of the above, and the decisions that are being made, and how we are our own decision makers and best authority on ourselves and have the most credible information about ourselves. But if you continue to deny and ignore that these structures and these agencies exist, right? I don't know what you're waiting for. I don't know how you're going to untangle or detangle yourself from several things that are codified in a codified society with a governance structure. If you have any questions about what I mean about that, go back and look at some of the videos. I've been teaching about this stuff for years. Take your time and do the research, search, inquire, and study. All right, y'all, I'm out. Drop your comments in the chat. I'll come back around if you have any questions about what it was that we reviewed. This has been another episode of iNTEL Drop, and I will see y'all again next time.